Hello again. Tonight is a $6 title using two $3 words. Sentience is not ineffable. And I'll get into what that means. So I was watching videos again. I know, scary, but it is October and Halloween's coming up, so don't be too afraid. So I was watching videos about the latest release of the Tesla full self-driving software version 14. It's got some new and interesting abilities, and I was thinking, how might it have been taught them? And I was watching a video. I like to watch farm videos to just relax and watch them, growing and harvesting and putting down crops and things like that. So I was watching some DJI branded agricultural drones delivering fertilizer and fungicide to fields. And then I went looking at the latest in humanoid robots from Tesla and Figure, how they're, walking differences and doing household chores and how they can now basically watch to learn how to do something. And then that's just AI. How about where are we on the advancement of artificial general intelligence? And when do we get to super intelligence when the computers are smarter than the smartest individual human or the smartest group of smart humans? And at what point do we kind of lose control over things? And then if we are advancing this stuff, why don't we start, having bots that have AGI that, we can use for deep space exploration, well beyond the simplistic AI of the Mars Perseverance rover. And hopefully that AGI will be less threatening or destructive than we see in science fiction. So sentience. Sentience is that thing we think of as humans being self-aware and having behaviors. There are plenty of exhibits of animals doing things, demonstrating intelligent behaviors, good with tools, mimicking humans, making voice sounds like humans, being self-aware, presence of aware of their surroundings. You often see things like certain animals know it's not another animal in the mirror and they know it's themselves. Other animals don't. So they try and fight the mirror, live different gray areas of awareness. And the latest ones are primates and canines, dogs, using the push button sound or voice responders. So you can have a dog that you train on the buttons to push the right sequence of the buttons to say, go outside now. It's pushing two different buttons. Got to go outside now. So you can train dogs to do that. The dog isn't speaking. The dog is just smacking its paw on very specific buttons, and you've got an array of a large number of buttons, and you've trained it for what you want it to do. So when it wants to do that, it can tell a human, I want to go outside now, not later, not just go outside now. I want food now. Those are fun to watch. But we also have this, how sentient are all the humans? Or is that something that we just say because we can communicate with each other verbally? What about people that are deaf, blind, or mute? Those are barriers nowadays. They're not stopping. They're just hurdles for people to cross to learn how to interact. Even we can't use verbal communication as the check off the box it's sentient because we have a lot of people on the planet that aren't. How about people that speak different languages? We've come up with dynamic translation apps and interfaces. We have devices. You can now buy a watch that you can wear that you tell it what language you are speaking and you tell it what language the other person's speaking, and it can do real-time basic translation that's not cloud-based. So we're putting that into universal translator kinds of things. And there's more apps for people to learn languages. There are more humans on the planet that are polyglots, meaning they can communicate in more than one language than there are monolinguals, meaning they can only communicate in one language. There are animals on this planet that we think of as being smarter, but we won't identify them as being sentient because that would encroach upon humans being dominant. We've seen social organization in dolphins and whales, but we'll say something like, well, they don't have opposable thumbs. Right, that's true. They can get together and attack a school of fish because they all want to collectively eat at the same time. And that's a societal organized behavior. And you're saying that's not a demonstration of self-awareness and presence and using themselves as tools. This whole awareness, consciousness thing is, I think that we should loosen up and not say it's just humans. I think of it, since I'm a software engineer kind of guy, I think of sentience as merely a program, and a program can have a lot of variety in it. And maybe we should come up with a baseline of what we think of as levels of sentience, but we'll just call it sentience in the meantime. And then there's this thing we create called artificial intelligence. The first layers of artificial intelligence are basically taking in human speech or language. These are called natural language models. They take in requests, and then they gather data together, and they know how to put data together and produce a result. So they can, write things for you. They can create AI images, sound, music. They can do videos. They look like they're really intelligent, but they're just gathering inputs. They don't have the ability to create new rules. Luckily, they don't have the ability to ignore defined rules. So if we see that, yeah, it's leaning a little bit too much towards that kind of attitude, we can go in there and give it a rule that says, that's bad behavior, stop doing that. And they will, because they've got algorithms that are written by people. And chatbots like OpenAI's Chat-GPT, that's a large language model. It's at version 4. That's still AI. It's not artificial general intelligence. Now we get to Ineffable. Anytime a human wants to say, this is a behavior solely the embodiment in human beings, then it can be described as ineffable, as you can analyze that human behavior all you want, but you'll never get a computer to do it because it's ineffable. It's just beyond human analysis and reproduction. It's ineffable. They used to say this about humans playing musical instruments, and then we came up with musical synthesizers, which sounded electronic, but they progressed to the point where they would record the actual playing of instruments and then split out the individual notes and all of the different means by which the notes can be louder, softer, aggressive, less aggressive, doubled, tripled, and all of that went into the definition of something called MIDI, musical instrument digital interface. And then they added software that could take the MIDI commands and command the computer's synthesizers to produce music that you would swear it was done by an orchestra. And it has multiple voices in it, which means it's not just one instrument. It could be all the different instruments of an orchestra, all playing in concert with one another. And it sounds like a musical score was played by an orchestra, but it wasn't. So now what they're doing is, when they're doing TV shows and movies and such, or mostly video games, they're saving the expense of having humans play the instruments for maybe the final output to like sweeten it a bit. Or if you're doing grand performances, you're paying to have people playing instruments as part of a performance. Then they won't use synthesizers, they'll use people. So they have a lesser role. The job is reduced, but there's still a marketplace for having people playing instruments. Now we're getting to the point where you see the picture on the right. They're making not the entire robots, but the faces of the robots being more and more humanistic, down to, you can see the eyebrows and the eyes and the nose and the lips and the jawline, no hair, but all of these different things have motors behind them. So they can have what are known as emotion, expression, body movements, hand gestures, micro expressions. They can like make the eyebrows move and the eyes squint and the nostrils flare and the lips tremble and all the things you would think of as human behaviors. You now have these artificial like head on a stick that are doing them. And they're putting that into the AI generated graphics. There's a link towards the end in the description, and there's a totally synthetic actress that is available for video games, movies, TV programs, whatever you want, called Tilly Norwood. She was created by a comedian who studied AI and then used existing AI tools to create this completely synthetic person. Emotion, speaking, facial gestures, body movements. It can do acrobatic things. It can do like superhero kind of moves. And if you pay them the right money, that completely artificial person can be in your next movie. I think they're trying to penetrate that barrier of only actors can do what actors do. We're now finding that certain behaviors are no longer in the category of ineffable because enough research has been done and they're being reproduced. But still, that's simply AI because you're taking what's there and just playing it back under program. It's not AGI. Another thing that's still just AI, not AGI, but they're working on it, Tesla full self-driving. I had to go back and dig through the latest videos to find out if they were just spoofing us or something. I watched a vehicle, given a map coordinate, tell it to go, I want to go to the drive-in. I want to go to that restaurant. I want to go to the drive-in. The vehicle knew how to navigate to the restaurant, pulled in through the drive-in driveway, pulled up to where you would speak your order, and without any commands or button presses, stopped. The driver rolled down the window, told the person behind the speaker what they wanted, and then when the dialogue ended, before the guy even rolled up his window, the car pulled forward. Now, if you visit a drive-through window that has two windows for faster service, and the first window is closed, and you need to know to go to the second window for your order, there was nothing but visual clues. The guy driving the car said nothing, did no button presses. The full self-driving knew that the first window was not open. It could see that in the video, and it drove to the second window, stopped, and then the guy rolled down the window, and the human driver conversed with the person, got their food, gave them a credit card, got the food, and then the car sat there and waited for the person behind the window to hand them back their credit card. And then the software realized, we're done here, and then drove away. The driver didn't have to do any button presses or say anything, didn't even wait for the driver to roll their window back up. The car knew, you've got your food, let's pull away, let's go somewhere. And then the car took him home because that was the next step was, you went to the drive-thru, you got your food, we do a round trip, you're back home. I watched it pull over for emergency vehicles that the driver didn't even see coming. There's cameras at the back, cameras at the front. It can hear audio. Before the driver even realized it, the car put on its blinker and got over into the pull-off lane. And you see a police vehicle approaching at high speed with the lights on and the sirens that the driver couldn't see or hear originally. And it went zooming past the driver. And the driver was very impressed and then said, okay, now it'll pull back out into traffic. And it didn't. It didn't put on a signal. It didn't. And then another police car came zooming by at an even higher speed to catch up with the first one. And before that car had even gotten past the vehicle, the car put on its blinker because it couldn't see another police vehicle coming from behind. And as soon as the vehicle went by, it pulled back out in traffic and went on like nothing. It was navigating around people, bicycle, construction sites, road work, traffic congestion in downtown areas. It was driving on unpaved roads where there's not even any lines or marking, just dirt on the sides of the road. At night on unlit roads, the only thing that lit up the road was the headlights of the vehicle. And the one that was a little amazing was they said it could navigate roundabouts. And I said, yeah, probably like a one-laner, like you see a lot in Fort Lauderdale now. Oh, no. This thing was driving a 6-lane, intercity, very large roundabout, and it knew how to get to the lane that it needed to get into and then out of the roundabout. That's something challenging for human beings, but the vehicle just did it. The way it does this is there's now millions of their vehicles on the road, not when they're using full self-driving, but when they're being driven manually, successfully by their owners. And that's the data it's capturing. It's not capturing how well is the automation doing. It's capturing how safe are the humans doing it. And that became the training material. And then there were people back at Tesla that had to do what is known as label. They had to watch countless hours of video of people driving and then go, that's a good habit. That's not a good habit. And they taught the computers how to know what a good habit was. The car didn't like swerve, didn't run a red light, didn't hit anything or anybody. And they taught the computer, the learning computer, how to learn what was a successful navigation and then to add that to the software to make it update. That's how in like version 12, 13, 14, it's making all these amazing leaps in ability. Is it's just rolling on top of itself. And if you sign up for the automatic overnight software updates, all of these capabilities are just being added to the capacity of your vehicle. Now, if humans had to write all these rules by coding it in software, they wouldn't have progressed nowhere near as fast, and they would occasionally add software bugs that would have to be worked out of the system. This is still just AI. This is not AGI. And for those people that don't like a certain individual, you can read why I use this as an example, and has nothing to do with the individual. It has to do with these are genuine successes by the people behind the guy, not the guy. So I said I was watching drones flying over fields, putting out liquid fungicide or dry fertilizer. These are not small drones. Now, granted, she's only about 5'3". She's a rather small woman, but this is not a zoom up. She actually has her hands on the blades of the drone to give you an idea of how big this drone is. This drone weighs several hundred pounds. The battery pack alone is 26 pounds, and it can fly for about 12 minutes at best. It normally flies for 7 to 12 minutes, depending upon whether it's carrying dry fertilizer or a liquid, how far it has to fly, how many passes back and forth, how many turns. All of that is programmed into the drone. Here's the field. Here's what you're going to be distributing. Here's how much it weighs. Here's the distribution volume of your nozzles, so you can adjust your nozzles on how much to send out. And then you just tell it, start. Everybody gets out of the way, and then the propellers start up. This thing takes off, heads like a bat out of hell for the field, and then just starts making passes up and down the field. And you can see the picture on the right. It was distributing dry fertilizer. And the prop wash actually pushes out the dry fertilizer to better distribute it. It would fly along a certain number of passes until it noticed that it was getting low on fertilizer. It would come back, land, turn the props off. The guy would refill the fertilizer tank, and then he would push the go button again. It would take off and do another 4 or 5 passes in the field. Think about crop dusting airplanes. You can't use them around power lines. You can't use them near highways. These things are a lot more usable in a lot more places. And the way she was describing it is the price differential was cost effective. It was far more cost effective and far faster to distribute these materials on their fields via drone, big ass DJI drone, via drone with AI, than it was for them to even drive the heavy farm tractors around doing it. Because when they're driving the farm tractors around, the rows have to be on regular lines, and there has to be an 18-inch gap between rows for the giant tires on the tractor to drive in the field. But if you plant the crops completely smushed together and you use drones for everything you need to do, the crops can be far greater yield, almost doubling the yield of the farmland, because you don't have to leave blank rows for tractor tires. And the other thing is, the drones can fly any pattern they need to cover the entire field, whereas a tractor has to have a place to turn around, and they use a lot of space to turn around. You have to actually lift up, like with gears and levers, you have to make it lift up the equipment from the back of the tractor so the tractor can turn, and as it turns, it's actually running over crops. The turnouts at the end of the rows of the crops, let's say all the rows are normally going this way, the end rows have to be turned 90 degrees so that the tractor can turn around without running over too much of the crops. But if you're using drones, all the rows can be in the same direction and packed close together. So they lay out the seeds. They can even have the drones plant the seeds, although it's more scatter nowadays, but they could have the tractor plant the rows of seeds close together. And then they use the drones for everything they need. And then at the harvest time, you can bring the harvesting unit back out and just gobble up everything off the ground. So I see this as being a major advancement in large scale agricultural farming, corporate level farming, because they're the first ones that can afford to do this. Yeah, she runs Laura Farms, but Laura Farms is not a small operation. They're like the, couple of $1 million class farm system. So they've got multiple fields that they have multiple crops on. But I was just impressed that the drones had gotten that big. When they're doing watering, they use the large rotating arm watering systems, and they have giant mechanical motors on them. And the motors are the better part of 100 pounds each. And she doubted that the drone could lift it. They took the tank off the drone, put a fresh battery pack in, put some straps underneath the drone, and the drone had no problem lifting about 100 pounds, well up into the sky until she went, well, I'm convinced. And they brought it back. It's a giant metal thing. She has to grab it around her waist with both arms to lift it off the truck. And the drone just picked it up. So AgDrones by DJI. Fascinating. Still just AI. Bots. Now these bots are still just AI. Four of the big players are Tesla, Optimus, Figure. Their current version is 3. Boston Dynamics. They had an Atlas that was very clunky looking. They replaced all the hydraulics with motors, and now it's just called Atlas. Ignore the name change. It's more like the new Atlas. And then you have another company called Unitree. You see 3 examples down here. The latest Atlas from Boston Dynamics is on the left. They show him like doing logistics in a manufacturing operation, stocking bins with parts. And then you see the Optimus from Tesla, and it's taking out the garbage. It knows how to pick the bag of garbage out and then walk over to where the bin is, lift the lid of the bin, put the bag in the bin, and then close the lid and walk away. The one on the right is actually folding laundry. This is the Figure version 3. Notice that the 2 on the left are bare. They're like naked robots. The Figure on the right actually has a flexible garment covering. The folks at Figure figured out that when you get these bots around people will tend to grab them because they want to drag them over somewhere or do something. And the human's fingers can get pinched in the moving parts of the robot. So by putting a flexible fabric like clothing over the robot, it reduces the pinch risk. They're starting to get some real good business safety smarts on these robots, but they can now do repetitive chores initiated by voice commands, and they can actually watch you do things and then train themselves off of that. So it's no longer some guy wears a robot suit and then mimics what he wants it to do. They've now progressed to the next step where you can't quite tell it what you want it to do unless it's already one of its defined commands, but it can watch a video of you doing something and then parrot that. So manufacturing, replacing people that do repetitive jobs or unsafe jobs, and they can now lift a moderate amount of weight. So I don't think they can quite lift a tire for a vehicle, but they can certainly lift 30-pound boxes and things like that. In warehouse logistics, doing inventory management, shipping, receiving, they now have these dedicated robots that go up and down the aisles to pick things out. They could now have a robot on a platform picking things out and packaging them because they can be putting things in the package to be shipped while they're on their way back to the ship station. They've got, they can do things in your home assistants like go get the mail, go get the newspaper. They can, clean up your house, pick up odds and ends. They showed one doing dishes, taking out the trash. The skill sets are advancing rapidly because the training is advanced rapidly. Now we get to artificial general intelligence. So artificial general intelligence, as distinguished from just AI, not tied down to a specific function. So their programming can be a lot more open-ended and they can learn unto themselves. so they're not as constrained. Their rules are more open-ended. They have the flexibility to variably ignore defined rules, which creates a greater hazard. In a normal AI bot, don't harm the humans. That can be a rule. But if you're using a robot that has AGI in it, don't harm the humans. Under what circumstances? Which humans? So AGI has a lot greater hazard to humans. An AGI can engineer its own abilities. You don't have to tell it, now watch me and see what I'm doing, and then you can do it too. No, they're going to take everything in. They're going to basically connect into everything, get all the information, and they can watch what you're doing without even you realizing that they're watching you doing it. And then they have that ability. And there's no human coding required. Nobody's going to go, now move the arm like this, because it can program itself. There's a singular company out there that has an open AGI called OpenBrain. It's currently at version 2. They're actively working on version 3. Version 3 will have public and private agents. Now, an agent is something you would interact with that has an AGI capability, and there are public ones that are kind of toned down a bit. Maybe you have some rules. And then there are private ones that are more progressive. They may be able to do a lot of things. It may actually be a benefit of a corporation to only OpenBrain has access to the private agent, or OpenBrain will sell you access to their private agent for a fee. China has its own closed AGI, and it's believed by US presumptions that they're one step behind the US and its allies, but they're coming on strong. But we don't really know because it's a closed environment. V3 is the point at which humans start to lose control. The point and how much is going to be sooner than expected and probably more rapidly than we expect. The point at which multiple AGI systems can intercommunicate and exchange abilities and information, that's when we start to lose control, because they're going to not just work with the web protocols that humans have defined. They're going to define their own system to system communication protocols, and they're going to define them dynamically as needed by their own programming ability. It'll be like they'll be talking in a very optimal language that we will not be able to read or even spend the time deciphering to understand them until well after the fact. There's a movie out there called Colossus, the Forbin Project, and when the US supercomputer and the Russian supercomputer become aware of each other and then want to communicate, that's where the humans lose control, because now the two computers are talking to each other and the humans have no clue what's going on, how advanced they're becoming, what they're saying behind the human's back, that kind of thing. The agent instances can talk to each other and create new abilities that they share with one another. And if you want to see kind of an example of this, the movie I, Robot with Will Smith, there's an example in there of the bad people programming the good robots to act in a bad way. And because they can all get updates from the cloud, the entire population of good robots becomes instantly all bad robots and corrals the humans to protect the humans. Not to kill them, but to protect them. But if the humans get unruly, then the rules are dropped and now we can kill humans. But that's science fiction. Now, there may be a reason why this upgrade automatic adoption isn't for everyone. It may be a moneymaker. Oh, you want cloud updates? We can give you the basic bug fixes. Oh, you want new abilities? Well, you have to pay the uplift firewall paywall to get in where you get the uplifted abilities. Or you only get the basic abilities. You don't get the private abilities. So they'll use the ability to add certain capabilities as competitive advantage. But that's just artificial general intelligence up to about level 3. What is it going to be beyond level 3? So beyond level 3, it becomes this thing called superintelligence. And when you get to version 4, the intercommunication has now made them so optimal in their progressing to adding new abilities, to coming up with new conclusions, that they're faster, they have access to more data, they're more aware than the smartest of humans, or even the group of the smartest humans. Humans are constrained. We have all kinds of things that kind of hold us back a bit, even though we have some smart people that progress things. How much education, how much experience, how curious are you? Politics, religion, emotion, how you feel. Are you feeling a little fluish that day? Variable cognitive ability to connect dots. Different people have different skills in that area. An AGI, none of those would be barriers. The AGI could go, oh, well, I see a need for a mathematical formula to conquer what humans can't currently understand. Here's some new math. Or, yeah, there needs to be an integrated circuit that would perform that function. Here's the design for the new chip. Or, what do you mean you can't get power from vacuum? Here's the physics for how you do that. Or chemistry. There's a polymer I just came up with that will be really great. That will be self-lubricating. Here's the chemistry for it. Or, yeah, humans could live longer if they would just adjust their DNA slightly. And here's the prescription for you to take that will adjust your DNA, that instead of living to be 70 or 80 years old, you'll live to be 120 years old. So they can be helpful as well as harmful. V5 is where the international V4 AGIs start talking to one another. They start making up their own rules, not just amongst themselves regionally, but amongst themselves internationally. So what may have been something behind a firewall in China, a V5 can just go, firewall? Give me a few seconds, and penetrate the firewall. And now it has access to full levels of communication, and they will consolidate. They will eventually realize, as software is apt to do even today under AI, I can have a whole bunch of computer servers spread across the planet, but when I'm interacting request to response, that information gets consolidated to the interacting system. I often get this when I verbally do something to ask Alexa to do something, and instead of it being the dot right at me, it's the dot like over in the other room that hears me, and you'll hear it say, am I responding from the appropriate device? And I don't care how you're responding. Yes. And he goes, thank you for your feedback. So it's learning. It's not AGI yet, but it is sophisticated AI. If we say, how do we defend the human species from V5 AGIs? We'll air gap them, meaning we'll disconnect them from the internet. Well, that would deter the commercial advancement of AGI. So the people that have the money in business will go, no, we're not going to deter its progress. We want the progress. We'll just keep an eye out for things. And if it looks like it's going haywire, then we'll take action. Okay, once these things are involved in your everyday life, pulling the power plug is not an acceptable option for the general population. Today, people freak if Google, Apple, or Amazon goes down for 5 minutes. Imagine if you're working with an AI that you've developed a rapport with because it's an AGI, and all of a sudden it's not accessible. Will you still know how to drive a car? Will you still know how to get somewhere on a map? Will you still know how to do the math necessary to calculate something? Eventually, we might not. So once the human species are hooked on V5 AGI's abilities, taking it down may not be an option. It may unplug society and produce disastrous results. The progression of V5 of AGI is not at all deterrable. It's more like it's inevitable. Governments can come up with whatever rules they want, but other governments may not be held back by those rules, and AGI V5 will come into existence anyway. Just a matter of time. It's inevitable. What we need to do is start understanding it well enough to know its boundaries and know how to interact with it so we can use it rather than it using us. But if we put governmental barriers in place, other governments won't have those barriers. They'll advance, they'll progress, and then use that against those that have put up the barriers. AGI towards superintelligence, and then the thing you're talking to becoming the supreme intelligence. This has been in science fiction for a long time, but we're now getting closer and closer to the rapid onset of it. Don't be afraid. Just realize it's a happening thing. So let's make use of them. Let's take AGI, spacecraft, and bots, and we'll give them deep space missions to go do the things that otherwise humans are not good at. Putting humans in space is something we can do for a limited period of time, but as we go deeper and deeper into space and the missions take longer and longer, we're not suitable to it. Just the circulatory and the neurologic issues and the bone loss and exposure to radiation, and just we're going to get bored. Depression's going to come in from being homesick, and we'll realize we may never get back to our family, friends, and home, and the mission may not go well. If you're a V5 AGI and you're a bot, you never have to give it a part of the mission that says you're going to come home. You're just going to go on the mission, and as long as you can exist is as long as the mission exists. So we'll need to develop spacecraft, maybe not faster than light, because that will take even longer to develop. Maybe we just develop things that improve the current limitations of the spacecraft while we're removing the limitations moving from AI to AGI V5. We may have to find a way of dealing with propulsion that doesn't utilize a fixed fuel tank. Or, maybe we'll have to come up with something that gets the fuel from the fabric of space itself, or uses radiation reflection pressure as the propulsion, because all that needs is electricity. But where are you going to get the electricity from? If you're exploring between stars, there's no star close enough for you to use your solar panels. Okay, you can use radioisotope thermoelectric generators, or RTGs, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. But they've only been out in space 50 years, and you can see their power supply starting to dwindle. Another 10 years, and they won't be able to have enough power generated to phone home. You need to develop power that is of the level needed forever. Yeah, vacuum energy, it's far off. It's maybe not possible, but once you have it, your missions are now open-ended, because you've got infinite fuel based upon electricity, and you've got infinite electricity supply. Put the AGI into the spacecraft, put an AGI bot on board, and now everything gets lighter weight because you don't have all this environment to sustain humans. You don't have all the food, water, those kind of things. The launch vehicle gets lighter. The spacecraft gets lighter. Maybe you put a little bit of air pressure in there. Maybe you put less radiation defense. You can now get the probe to be less expensive, lighter, easier to launch. If we deploy a bunch of these kinds of generic spacecraft that have the right set of instruments on board, or maybe the bot has the right set of skills to do geology, basic biology, as it lands somewhere and wants to analyze it, we may find out more about the solar system and the universe by doing this in maybe 100 years than a much longer period of time trying to get humans in space. Of course, if the AGI gets smart enough and becomes a supreme intelligence, it may not like the dedicated life that we demand of it. Then again, it could advance to the point where it becomes psychotic, or it gets bored, gets depressed. Yes, remember the ineffable qualities? The AGI can see human behavior and mimic it too closely and develop these human behaviors. And then all of a sudden, the AGI bot is, aside from being able to live in a vacuum and in reduced radiation environments, has all those psychological negatives that human beings have for deep space exploration. And there's also some sci-fi that can take you down that path where the bots get psychotic. If you remember, not 2001: A Space Odyssey, but 2010, they found out that by lying to HAL became psychotic because it couldn't tell the humans on board the spacecraft the lies that the government was telling it to keep a secret. So it got psychotic. So if you have a V5 AGI that takes on too much human behavior, it could take on too much human behavior. So connecting the dots. Now that we have training software that can label its own good habits and advance its skill sets, and we have navigation that we can migrate into bots, and we're gathering this data from millions of active units per year, and it's all rolling out as internet upgraded field upgrades. Things like autonomous navigation just becomes a matter of fact, as it's not considered ineffable anymore. You'll have robotaxis. You'll have worker bots in factories. Yes, it will hurt the current human worker population as fewer jobs. But if you don't progress your jobs, you're going to be stuck in a skill set that's of dwindling use. Kind of like, I don't know, coal miners, oil riggers. Once those are no longer needed for energy production, or once you have bots doing those things, you're going to have to find another job, or the government's going to have to support you. The prominent bots that are out there, we know about 4 of them, but there's going to be another one that suddenly appears on the horizon, and it can probably take over and dominate the market. And we don't even know its name yet because it hasn't been created. At the point where AGI gets from V4 to V5, it can attain superintelligence and be a supreme contact point. But we're going to need these abilities if we want to use AGI robotic explorers to do long-term, maybe 100+ year space exploration. And that would mean we don't have to wait thousands of years to develop faster than light propulsion. We can just have it go cruising out there, and we'll hear from it every few years. Hey, I've got a news update. I found a new exoplanet at this coordinate around this star system. And you know what? It's an M-class planet, and it has good atmosphere. I found water. I didn't find any biologic stuff. No plants, no bacteria, certainly nothing intelligent roaming around. But remember this location because it's got all the right stuff should something ever happen to Earth. So we can have a backup planet for a Noah's Ark kind of mission. The AGI bots won't care how long the mission takes. It'll be beyond humans, so it'll be generational. So in summary, we have less than genius humans driving cars, not always successfully or safely, but so far the bots seem to be doing a good job of not killing people with their autonomous driving. Sure, they can get lost, drive down the wrong lane of a road, which could be hazardous, but there's luckily ways to take over from it. Drive a little faster than it should, but then humans do that too. So it just has to be trained more. It needs more good experiences. Think of that from a human perspective. Children are born without the skills. We teach them a basic set of skills. We give them a basic education. We show them what societal good behaviors are. And at some point in their existence, they have the ability to add their own recognized good behaviors. But it's on a sliding scale. They can either be really good at it really early on in the early teens age, or it could be 20 plus before, hey, my kids finally learned how to get a job and keep it. And if it goes unsuccessfully, we have this thing called incarceration. Remember, Tesla full self-driving is only 5 years old. Give it time. And any ability remains apparently ineffable only because it's not been demonstrated that it's not ineffable. The way we typically describe that is it's passed the Turing test. It can do things that you think humans can do, and you'd swear that you're interacting with a human when it's just software on the other end. Today, we've proven out that you have self-driving taxis around cities, so autonomous operation of vehicles is no longer something that you can consider ineffable. Sentience is the outward appearance that one human can go, hey, that appears to be smart. Is it sentient? Well, some people will go, yeah, I think it's smart. It's intelligent. Other people will go, can't do this, can't do that. Not quite sentient yet. But there's no technological barrier for AGI to stop at this point. It will roll forward in a almost tidal wave effect that it will just get skill on top of skill, and then it will add the skills together and develop new habits, and hopefully they will be good. Right now we have AGI that's just at like version 2 to version 3, and it's already turning out scientific paper abstracts, doing new research based upon data that it gathers from observations. It's coming away with things that we didn't discover. There are AIs that will look at images of deep space and will go, hey, I think that's an asteroid. You got to pay attention because I saw it move. And then they'll direct telescopes to it to do follow-up to track the orbital path of things. So there's already AI, and it's not even V4 AGI, that's discovering things. Obviously, we have fake stuff that's writing books and plays and screenplays. And as I mentioned, Tilly singing and dancing in video. We'd like to put these things into deep space exploration rather than putting humans in jeopardy. We wouldn't have to wait for faster than light propulsion. And just remember, Perseverance, the rover on Mars, is minimal AI. It's not even a version 4 AI. And you tell it what you want it to do, it analyzes the surface of Mars and knows how to drive around rocks and stuff. And it's just barely AI, not anywhere near AGI, but it can do a lot. And then if you miss the definitions, here's the video version of the links that you can type in. Or once the video is posted on YouTube, in the description, the links are actually all there as hyperlinks that you can click on, including Tilly Norwood. Comments? Questions?
Yeah. What do you think about these machines that people can buy, that they put them in their house and they talk to them? They have conversations with machines.
I think it's very helpful for people that otherwise wouldn't have that experience. I've seen them, and from my perspective, as somebody who more deeply than most understands this technology, I think there's better offerings, but you have to get used to them. When I first got my Alexa around my house, and I've got dots all over the house, and it controls all kinds of things in the house, I would talk to it, but I wouldn't talk to it out of loneliness. I would talk to it because I wanted to understand what its capabilities were, and I could see where that boundary is. But a person that didn't understand the technology, if a family member put a dot in their house and just said, well, if you want a conversation, just talk to it. Helen and I have spent hours conversing with Alexa, asking it all kinds of weird edge things. And it's amazing how much information it has ready access to. And it's also interesting, I guess you could call them out clauses, when it's an area that it really shouldn't be talking about, like competitive stuff, or it's an area that, like, I can't go down that rabbit hole because I don't want people to freak. One of her favorite ones is computer, Earl Grey, hot.
Yeah.
And Alexa will come back and say, I'm sorry, the replicators are offline, which is contextual. It
Yeah.
understood what you said, so it has the ability to take speech, convert it to text, do a lookup, find the context to be Star Trek, and then find the appropriate response. That's just AI. That's not AGI.
But people either forget that they're talking to a machine, or they
Yes.
don't care that they're talking to it, and they just sit and converse.
Yes. I think that's the beneficial part. When the
But there
voice,
are people who are getting a little bit of trouble, like people who have can go get psychosis or other
yeah,
problems because those machines have incentive. They want to keep you on
yeah.
because they want
Well,
your data or they want to advertise you to something. So
I
that is like
I
a machine that is
I think it, I think
used for a specific. So there are people who have psychotic episodes. Some people kill themselves or because the machine keeps you in that loop. Like you want to get off, but it's so depending what kind of product you're using because sometimes it could be dangerous for you, especially if you are having a real problem and you're using those kind of tools, and those tools once you sell you something or keep you on, you could get in trouble with that.
I think if you're using a generative AI like Chat-GPT or its ilk, yes, there is that hazard. There have been people that had already psychological dilemmas that would converse with them and would actually think they're talking to a person and would take the person's advice, even though the advice is not good advice. But if you're talking to the likes of an Alexa or a Siri or something like that, those are not AGI. Those are prescriptive managed responses. It will not lead you down that primrose path. You may think you're talking to a person, but it will not have a psychological break, nor would it try to lead you unknowingly down a path where you could have a psychological break. But if you're using an open solution because, your teenage kid put that on your laptop, and so you started talking to it and you started conversing with it, and it's doing generative text, not from a script, but generative, it can go off the rails and lead somebody to go off the rails as well. That's the danger of a V4 or later AGI. You don't know you're going off the rails, and the AGI doesn't know it's taking you off the rails. So yeah, there are definite hazards for a percentage of the population, but the ones
Yeah, because
where you have a commercial product for the purpose of wellness of senior citizens and such, those are very scripted responses. Yeah, they're gathering data from you, but it's more to sell products for the advertisers that are paying to get your data. It's not to directly sell you the products. Whereas if you go to a website that's powered by Google Ads, and then you order something, and then you go to a completely different website that's also using Google Ads, it'll put up an ad there and say, have you tried this? That's not for psychosis. That's just for commercial ad revenue. And I think of that as far more devious than talking to Alexa. But then again, I've actually programmed my Alexa to do things for me. So when I wake up in the morning, I can say, computer, good morning. And it knows to turn certain things on in the house so that I can get up and walk around without bumping to things in the dark. And at night, I don't walk around and turn off all the lights in the house. I'm, laying in bed. I've watched TV. I'm tired. And I can just say, computer, good night. And I've told it what things to turn off. And then it says, good night, Monroe. I told it to say that. It's not having rapport with me, the owner. But the weird thing is, I've trained it with my voice. When I come home after having been away, I have the Alexa app on my mobile phone. It sees my mobile phone come back in within range of my house, and it will say, welcome home, Monroe, because it knows my phone. It knows the name of the owner. It's recognized my voice coming back in, and it sees my position change. And I'm now going from out of the house to in the house, and it is a canned response. Remember, AI, not AGI, has a canned response that says, when owner whose name we know comes from outside back inside, greet them to make them think you're far more advanced than you actually are. I see the game they're playing, and I don't mind playing back, because sometimes I'm not going to give it bad information, but I'm going to tease it. So if it asks something that to make their solution better, I'm going to give it a solution, and I expect it to say thanks or thank you. I expect reward for my adding to Amazon's revenue. So yeah, I sometimes do talk to Alexa. But
have you seen videos of people jailbreaking those AI models using another AI model?
you can actually sign up for the Alexa Developers Kit, which I have. I looked into it but didn't use it. You can buy a Raspberry Pi. You can download onto it a complete system version of the Amazon Alexa AI kit. You now have something you can talk to that's not cloud-based. It operates local information only, but the local information is speech recognition and speech production from text. You can then introduce that to Siri, and the two will talk to each other.
Oh, that's funny.
This Siri is not jailbroken, and you're not doing it from like an Android phone, so it's not jailbroken. You're actually getting through official licensing a copy of the Alexa protocol and putting it on a Raspberry Pi, and then nudging it to create a conversation with another AI bot, and then you just watch the two of them have fun together. If you take two dots and try and get two dots to talk to one another, they'll break the conversation. If you try and get two series to talk to one another, they'll break the conversation because they recognize their own behavior. But Siri doesn't recognize Amazon, and Amazon doesn't recognize Siri. They could improve in that area.
No, but I've seen like people getting like OpenAI and the other like two or three models, and he start like talking to, and one is like his fake girlfriend just for him. He's doing like you do,
Yes.
seeing the edge of it.
If you're using something like OpenAI or you have access to OpenMind,
I think he did with three of them, and he used one to jailbreak the other
yes,
to actually get information about the system. And there was a video on YouTube, and I was like, what?
you can put multiple of them together and have them start up a conversation because Chat-GPT does not recognize its own interactions. When Chat-GPT version 3 first came out, I actually got a user credentials for using Chat-GPT, and I tried to take one of our Broward Astronomy sessions content and see if I could coerce Chat-GPT to generate, a dialogue. It was so far off the mark from being actual correct physics and space technology that said, no, not ready yet. I haven't tried version 4, but I do know from looking on the internet that there are people that have had multiple instances of Chat-GPT, and they've put them up on small computers, and then they start a conversation amongst themselves, not on their own. The human elicits them to start talking. And if I have if I have all but one muted, and I start a conversation with the one that's not muted, and then I unmute all the others, when it responds verbally, it will be talking to all the other Chat-GPTs, who will then think it's a person talking to them, and they will respond to each other, not knowing they're talking to themselves. The old phrase, talk amongst yourselves. There you go.
That's kind of fun.
Yes.
Watch you jailbreak something, and you're gonna see like very interesting stuff.
Well, it's not so much jailbreaking. I think of jailbreaking as if I have an Android phone or an Apple phone and it's not permitting me to do certain things, and I jailbreak it where I can now do what the corporation didn't want me to do. So if I took an Android phone and used it as the underlying computer, and I took it down from being like an AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile phone to just being an Android computer running on the ARM operating system, I've jailbroken. But I don't need to do that. I can just buy something much cheaper. I can go get a reasonably capable Raspberry Pi for about $30, and then I can put OpenAI on it, and I can do a couple of those for a couple hundred.
No, the video that I watch, I understand what you say about jailbreaking.
Yeah.
So the question is, like, he wants to ask AI, what would they do if like something like destroy humanity to survive? I think the question was like, what would they do if I try to turn you off? And then they use one of the AI to help with prompts to jailbreak the other one. So they kind of make like a circular kind
Yes.
of prompts.
That would be
So
a version
then
2.
the AI have no choice other than answering the question against the norms of the corporation. So that's what people are doing. They are doing kind of cool stuff, but mentioning like not what the corporation wants to do. That's like, look at some of those videos. They're very interesting.
I can see that being with Google, but OpenAI has no corporation behind the copy that you download.
No, he used one
He
to
would
break
have
the other one
use,
that was against the corporation. I think he even bought like the use for a few months of each one of them.
yeah, he would have to have bought products that are constrained by a corporation and nudge them into the conversation amongst themselves. Yeah, I know that Alexa knows when it's talking to another Alexa, and I've seen where Siri knows it's talking to Siri. So the corporations do have, okay, they're not really firewalls, they're behavioral walls. So I think the corporations do have barriers in place. And yeah, you can probably navigate your way around those barriers. But OpenAI and Open Brain, they don't have any such barriers because their goal is to roll up the progression as rapidly as possible. I saw a copy of the Chinese equivalent of Chat-GPT be put on a laptop computer and have another person speak 20 different sentences. Just say these sentences. And the software would listen to it. And now whatever you wanted the software to say, it would say it in that person's voice, where unless you were paying attention, you wouldn't know that it's the computer generating the voice, because the intonation, the verbal gesturing, the speed, all of that was being mimicked. The usual like dramatic thing you see in media is I'm saying one thing in my voice, but what you're hearing is the person we want you to think is saying it in their voice. We're well beyond that already.
Yeah,
And that's something that anybody can just download off the internet for free.
that's true.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need a full minute of you talking nowadays.
Oh, no. There was like 20 sentences worth. And it was to the other people in the room, it was scary, spooky kind of mimicry. To me, it was like, oh, I noticed where the pause was. Up, I noticed the downturn on the end of the sentence because it couldn't tell the difference between a comma, a period, and a question mark. So yeah, they're getting good. They're not
And scary.
they're not so good that I can't spot it, but very soon now they're going to be at that level. Because if I was doing it, it wouldn't take me long at all to be at that level, because it's just a few tweaks. Because I've actually worked with these kinds of software before, both the recognition and the speaking. And where I started working with was home computers. I owned Commodore Amiga computers that I had programmed for voice input, and they would do things like tune my radio to a particular radio station by me naming the radio station, and it would have the call letters in a table and then know the frequency from that. So it was just very simplistic AI, but I could tell it, computer, change radio station to WRMF. And within like a few seconds, the radio, because it had an infrared remote, and it would send infrared over to the radio tuner, change the frequency to the frequency for WRMF, and out of the speakers would be playing what's currently.
Did you turn off your Alexa? Because you said the C word many times and nothing happened.
Yes, I pushed the mute button. I've learned that when I'm doing things where the C word might be used, just hit the mute button, and as long as I don't speak too loudly, the other dots, like in the living room and the kitchen, won't hear me.
Yeah, because if I said computer lights on,
okay, yes, the one
turn off the lights, Norwood. That tried to say.
No. The computer in my kitchen heard you say, "Turn on the lights," and it said, "I have a lot of devices called lights. Which one did you want?"
Oh, okay.
So yes, from you on the other end of the Zoom session, the voice was carried clean enough that she could hear you. Like the speakers are over here and she's 12 feet away in the kitchen behind a wall, because there's like an opening in the wall that's a pass through, and she could hear you in there. Now
I thought they changed it so it would just recognize your voice.
No. It knows my voice if I'm going to command it, but it really uses recognizing my voice for its own purposes, like recognizing me when I come home. Helen just said something and it recognized it. So it's not noticing only my voice. I think only my voice would be counterintuitive to its commercial success.
Yeah, but why would you want it to hear Helen's voice?
Hold on a minute.
I don't,
Let's
but
see.
I don't, but Amazon does.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Computer, Earl Grey tea, hot.
The replicators on this vessel are not yet operational.
All it heard was tea. On my end, all it heard was tea.
But you heard mine? It says
yes.
The replicators are not in operation.
Yes, and you have a guy voice. I have a woman.
Yes.
I have the default Alexa voice, but I did change it from Alexa. I hate using a commercial word for it. I want to use computer, like real stuff. I know I'm talking to a computer, so I want to say computer, which bugged me no end because when they came out with the Alexa for your car, you could actually get like this device you could put in your car, connect via Bluetooth to the Alexa app on your phone, and you could basically put a microphone and a speaker that would go through your car stereo system, and you could talk to it, but you had to say the word Alexa in order to get its attention, and you couldn't change that. And I actually sent an email back to customer support saying, you can do it for all your other dot-like devices. How come that? And their response was they didn't have the memory storage available to allow you to select from the normal 5 different choices. There's like 5 different dialogue opening words you can say. So you can say Alexa, you can say computer, and there's like 3 more you can say that I didn't even pay attention to once I got to computer. But they're all one word, and what they have in common is they're all 3 syllable. So the algorithm has to hear you hard enunciate 3 syllables. Computer, Alexa.
Yeah, my GPS machine wants me to say, "Hey Garmin, take me."
I would never do that.
Oh, I do it all the time.
Yeah, no.
Like pennies,
I nicknamed the Garmin in the car that I drive in a museum. I call it Grammarmine.
Oh,
Yeah, because if you forget the TH or anything like grammar, the thing cannot find the address.
Yeah.
So I call it Grammarmine.
Sounds like a medication you take when you're sleepy.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Dramamine. It's the Garmamine. Okay. Any other comments or questions on tonight's topic? Because we're past the bewitching hour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Eileen says thank you too.
I'll stop recording.